It's important to go into adopting with your eyes wide open.
She is diagnosed with FASD. She was born addicted to heroin, premature at 25 weeks. She has ADHD, melatonin to help her sleep.
So both of my boys have developmental trauma. One of them has ADHD.
I was born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, FASD, cohesive attachment disorder, ASD, ADHD, severe anxiety, sensory processing disorder, slow processing learning disability. Oh, and I forgot sleep apnea. No wonder he's a bit fizzy occasionally.
Some of his diagnoses are fairly nebulous, but they have to be because we're talking about a spectrum. So he was diagnosed with ASD, with autism, at 4 years of age. So he had a very young diagnosis. Now that's down to the tenacity and resilience of my wife, who was really in the face of the authorities. And we got a diagnosis and it didn't surprise us. We've since had confirmed diagnoses of ADHD as well, combined. So it's both the attention deficit and the hyperactivity. We believe that within his position on the autistic spectrum, there is definitely a level of demand avoidance. Whether or not it's pathological demand avoidance hasn't been confirmed, but there's a lot of that in his profile. We have strong suspicions that he's also dyslexic, and we've had minimal cooperation from schools to try and explore that to this point. We believe he also has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and we're battling with the authorities at the moment to get him tested for that, because that may mean a totally different therapeutic approach is relevant. And knowing that would give us, I don't think any of these diagnoses give you a templated cure, but the more you know, the better you do. So the more pinpoint diagnoses you've got, you know what you're dealing with. He has severe attachment disorder, he has sensory processing disorder, he has a complex cocktail of conditions. One of his earliest paediatricians said that he was in the top 1% of complex cases he'd ever seen in his career. And that was at 3 years of age. And that was before any full diagnosis of any description.
This is Adopters Anonymous. Anything you say here is in the strictest confidence.
Who are these people?
Man, these people are heroes.
My name is Martin, I'm 51 years old, and I am an adopter.
My name is Carl, I'm 50 and I'm an adopter.
Hi, my name's Chris. I am 49 years of age and I am an adopter.
Hi, my name's Chris. I'm 58 years old and I'm an adopter.
These extraordinary people, they are adoption superheroes, truly astonishing folk.
Today, we're looking at the medical conditions that the children adopted by our group have.
Why? Because a significant proportion of adopted children in the UK have conditions that require additional attention and medical assistance. Research indicates that nearly half of adopted children have recognised special educational needs or disabilities, or SEND, with 60% of these children possessing an Education, Health and Care Plan, or EHCP. This is a substantially higher rate than the general population.
So this podcast is really about our experiences as adopters, and we didn't plan to include particularly extreme examples of some of the conditions adopted children can have. And it's completely by chance that within our group there are some particularly challenging medical diagnoses. Maybe it's just luck that determines what unknown conditions our children come with. And while Chris and Carl have to deal with extremely complex behaviour on a regular basis, my children are what I describe as low-level disruptors. Nothing too extreme now, but constant, and they wear me out. So is it a lottery?
Well, I can give you examples of both, Martin, and it's both our children. Our daughter, I've told the story about, you know, how it was destiny that she found us rather than we found her, I think. and that she became our daughter despite all the odds and evidence. Well, one of the off-putting factors we found out that there had been 49 couples inquire about her daughter, and every one of them had pulled out when they found out that her birth mother was HIV positive. Now, we took a different path. We didn't choose that to be a deterrent. We chose that as a piece of information to research. So we contacted the Terence Higgins Trust. We asked all the sort of questions about, is this still life limiting or just life affecting? What do you have to declare? Do you have to tell schools? Do you have to tell partners in later life? Whatever it may be. So we went into it deeply. And we decided to take that chance because at the time our daughter was still less than a year old, and the definitive test to validate whether or not you are HIV positive can't be done until you're 2. It has to be done with 2 years of age or later. So we were warned she will have fetal alcohol syndrome. She has the facial features. There's no question. That's a diagnosis that could pretty much be made within the first few weeks of her life. There will be complicated problems. There was bipolar and all sorts of things in her family background that would have meant that, she's not going to dodge every bullet that was coming her way. But the biggest sword of Damocles hanging over her was this potential of HIV. When she had the test at 2 years of age, she didn't have it. So, boo to the other 49, basically, that walked away from it, and props to us. So in some ways, we walked into that one with our eyes open, and it wasn't as severe a diagnosis as it could have been. I've got 2 birth children. If one of those is involved in an accident and becomes paraplegic, I don't change my mind. You adapt and you carry. And I think from the moment we've made a decision that this is going to be our daughter, the warranties are relevant, as it were. We've even had people in the medical profession. We've had CAMS professionals say they are only adopted. You can reverse it. And that's one of the most insulting phrases I think I've ever come across. They're only adopted, You can bring this to a close if it gets too difficult.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So that's a professional.
That's a professional. That's a medical professional.
Doesn't that just say a lot?
This is what we're fighting against, isn't it? This is what we're up against. And I think what you say, Martin, is it a lottery? No, it's not a lottery. These children are going to come along. We said this in another app. These children are going to come along with at least one diagnosis, with at least one thing. I mean, they've been separated from parents.
Yeah.
So that's one.
If anybody's ever read The Primal Wound, it's a very harrowing but very sobering read, which basically says it's impossible to avoid any trauma because the very first thing you experience in your life is loss and separation. The person that's carried you is no longer the person that looks after you. If they're removed from birth, you've got used to their voice, their heartbeat, everything. So the first thing you experience in your little life is loss. That makes children who are adopted subject to a lot more trauma than anybody because it's ingrained into their existence that their separation is the first thing they experience. The reverse happened with our son in that we were told if he survives his withdrawal, because he was born withdrawing from crack cocaine, if he survives that, which was 50-50, then it's likely he'll be fine. That's almost a precise quote. And the likely he'll be fine kid who did survive his withdrawal is the same kid who's in the 1% most complex cases that a senior paediatrician has ever come across in his career. So we were sold that one a little differently. So we had our daughter who was less severely affected than she could have been based on what we knew, and our son who was far more severely affected than we were led to believe he was going to be. So we had a little bit of both.
In that trauma of being adopted and removed from the family itself, I mean, that I find incredibly interesting because I remember reading before we adopted something, I think it was Sarah Nash that said, one of the respondents in her book, this book I was reading, said she was asked, when did you stop? So I think she was adopted at, say, a year old, maybe earlier than that. And the question was, when did you realise that you weren't going to be moved on to another family again? And she said, when I was 22. You just think that is how deep it goes. I think that trauma, the neglect, the abandonment issues.
It is. I mean, that book, if anyone's interested, is by a lady called Nancy Ferrier, the Primal Wound, and it's a bit of a sort of dark web version of what you might be letting yourself in for. But I think it's good knowledge to be forearmed with. But I mean, I think I said when I gave the example about how our daughter became our daughter that for us, adoption's not a lifelong sentence. It's a mechanism by which they become your children. As I say, I'm in a position similar to our friend at the bottom of the screen at the moment. I've got both birth children and adopted children, and the depth and nature and style of love that you have for both is exactly the same. You can't differentiate it in any way.
No, definitely not. Totally agree.
As unconditional as your birth children, it is as lifelong, it is as committed.
Parts of this episode were recorded a few weeks ago, just after the schools had returned following half-term. Half-term offers an opportunity for the children to relax and recharge. It's also an opportunity for parents to not have to run the morning school gauntlet challenge. It also provides parents with the opportunity to see how their children are progressing in their development. Whilst it's a great relief for school to end, it's often quite a relief for the children to get back into a regular routine. Here's how Carl and Martin got on and what it demonstrated about the medical conditions they have to manage.
Hello, Mark.
Hi. How calm is your house today?
It's been, not too. It's not as bad as it was before half term, but it's that transition of going from half term into school. So, I've been slapped a couple of times, bitten, and then I went into the bathroom downstairs to put his toothpaste on his toothbrush. I opened the door, he closed the door, he banged me on my head one side, and then as I moved away from that, I banged my head on the door frame on the other side.
Oh, man.
But he apologised, he did say sorry, so, but we got, he wandered off a little bit, and didn't want to get in the car, so I followed him. But then helped the bin men out, put the bins on the back of the bin truck, and then got him in the car. He was fine. We got into school all right.
And a bit of calm during school hours then?
A bit tidying up, getting things, we've been away, so a few offloads on, and get ready for him coming back later.
We've both had half term. Ours has been all right. With our kids, we try and pack a lot into the week. They lose interest in things very quickly. The devil makes work for idle hands, doesn't he? So if they're bored, they find mischief to do. Keep them occupied as much as you can. They have this incredible inability to do anything for themselves that doesn't require staring at a screen. And that's about it, And it's not because we've brought them up in a way to make them rely on screens. My God, we try and get them out everywhere and do loads of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the start of the holidays, we've had a fairly good week, I think. We've had fallouts, but they're no different to standard family fallouts where, we've got two boys and they fight. So how was yours then? What did you do for the week?
So I was away for a few days for my 50th little golfing trip. So I wasn't here for the beginning of it. But then we had a couple of days at home, which the weather wasn't great, was it? We had a couple of days where it was rain. So to be fair, screen time, so a lot of me watching him on Planet Coaster, building rides. And then we went up to Shotton near Peterlee. So we went to the beach for a couple of days at Seaton Crew, which I know you know very well.
I love it all around that coastline.
It's stunning, Seaton Crew's brilliant. My son loves the beach. There's the arcades, and then there's the chip shop where he gets his chicken fish from.
So tell me about this chicken fish. It's something that, it might make my kids eat.
well, you know what a battle, what food, it can be a battle, can't it, to get our kids to eat?
Yeah.
And there's two things my son absolutely hates, and one of them's mushrooms and one of them's fish. So when I am at the gym and eating healthily, my favourite snack is a tin mackerel with tomato sauce in it. I only have to get that out of the cupboard and he's going. So we went, it's a few years ago now, we went to the chip shop that we always go to, and they do these fish bites. And they look very similar to chicken selects from a very famous fast food restaurant. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, I'll have some of them." And we were like, okay, you know. So he starts eating them, and we were like, I don't know whether we mentioned to him that it was fish, but it was like, it tastes like chicken. And from then on, it's been chicken fish. But we went on Saturday and they hadn't got these fish bites, but they got a normal size cod, cod chicken fish. So he said, "Oh, I'll have one of them." Well, do you know myself for thinking, if he doesn't eat it, because it isn't exactly the same, we can eat it.
Yeah.
Well, devoured it.
No. Oh, gutted.
Yeah. So we just had a few chips. So the next day we went again to the beach, and he's on the beach, and he said, "Oh, you know, what do you want to eat?" And he went, "I want 2 large chicken fish." And we were like, "Do you know how much that is? I don't care about inflation. I want 2 chicken fish." And, you know, scoff 1.5 of them. So
that's one of those things that you kind of look back and think, these are memories. And, you know, as much as some of the tough stuff that we're going to talk about, these are memories that you won't forget. And we had this with our eldest this week. Last year, he won a competition at his school. Yeah, just a raffle sort of thing. Forgot it. Well, he entered it, forgot about it. And a couple of months later, his mum came home and said, "Oh, you know, you've won this competition." And it was a day using a trial bike under a full instruction at a local club. And it was just fantastic. So he went along. Oh my God. He absolutely loved it. And just seeing the smile on his face and you know, and the youngest obviously didn't do that, went out and did something else instead. We had a big old day at Chatsworth House with his mates. So that was fine. So they've had a really good time. Not much falling out, which is good. But what I did notice, you know, towards the end of term, and it's something that we've become aware of before, is he certainly gets something that we've seen called ADHD burnout.
yeah.
Basically, he's, you know, a few days before the end of term, he's knackered. He's done. He shuts down. You know, he'll come home and he'll plonk himself under his duvet, which is a safe space, and just, he's almost disassociating. It's kind of like quite hard to watch. Come the end of term, you know, he's still tired, but then suddenly it becomes wired again quite quickly. He did this in the week of half term, and yeah, I mean, he's almost regressing and doing, you know, just acting like the goat. And so we decided to put him onto his ADHD meds during half term. And the difference was just phenomenal. So
yeah,
we don't often see what happens when he's taking his meds because he's at school.
Yeah.
To see it actually happening was, you know, really eye-opening and a real bonus for us to see some of the good stuff that, you know, you don't want your kids to be loaded up with loads of meds. But if they're doing the job,
yeah,
you can't knock that. So I don't know what you do with yours during. I'm guessing he's on his meds the whole time, is he?
Yeah, I need restock his tablet things. He has 4 in the morning, then he has 3 staggered throughout the day, and then 1 at night with his liquid. So it's ADHD medication and anxiety medication. Without it, I don't know where we beat. If the one he takes at the end of the day as well, it's called promethazine. We use that as a PRN. So PRN is if we're going out somewhere and we feel it might be a little bit overstimulating or meeting new people, we give him a promethazine and it just just takes the edge off the anxiety kind of thing, and just, it is something that we worried about before we started medicating him. Yeah, you don't want to do it as a parent. You really don't want to medicate your child. But then you see the response. You know what they're like without the medication. And once you start giving them the medication, once they get into a good routine, you know when they're due the medication. I've got alarms on my phone, but there are times where I don't need that alarm on the phone because I see it start bubbling and becoming busy. I think for us now, it's the fact that he's got a quality of life. So he needs them meds.
I guess all of these conditions and all these medications, you've always known about them, haven't you? I mean, you've always been an expert in them since even before you were adopted. So that's why you were adopted, I'm guessing, isn't it?
Yes, of course it is, Mark.
Dr. Carl and Dr. Martin holding court.
It's a cliche, but every day's a school day, and today is no different. So I hope you're all paying attention. In the UK, prospective adopters are entitled to receive comprehensive information about a child's physical and mental health before proceeding with an adoption. This process is governed by the Adoption Agency's Regulations 2005, which mandate that adoption agencies provide detailed health reports to ensure adopters are fully informed. This is what the CPR is for. The Child Permanence Report is a detailed formal document prepared by the child's social worker when a child is being considered for adoption. It's a key part of the adoption process and is shared with prospective adopters to help them make an informed decision. A good CPR should cover the child's birth family background, care history and why adoption is being pursued, medical information, developmental assessments, emotional well-being and any known diagnoses or concerns, school history, support needs and learning progress, current or planned contact with birth family or siblings, and information about the court process, care orders and adoption placement orders. But many adopters report that the CPR often downplays or omits crucial information. Real-world experience suggests a different truth, especially around mental health, trauma or undiagnosed conditions. Adoption UK's 2022 Adoption Barometer said that 70% of adopters felt they were not given enough information to make informed decisions about parenting a child with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. 89% of children diagnosed with FASD experienced a diagnosis delay of over a year after concerns were raised. 68% of adopters reported not having a support plan in place for their family.
You don't get a manual or anything. I've heard of ADHD. I didn't know what it was, really. I've heard of autism. Do you know what I know about autism? I watched Rain Man as a kid. That was it. We're not prepared, are we?
No. I think the thing is, though, it's like you say, we knew what autism and ADHD, we'd heard about them. You know, we may not have known the causes or how they manifest, but there's a lot of them that we've got in the group that we know about them because we live with our kids who've got it. But I think the society's view on it, and maybe professionals, their understanding of some of them that are in the lists, is not very good. Is years behind autism and ADHD.
There are some that we think we know about a lot of things, but then, and as you say, particularly the one that interests me, well, actually there's two that interest me: FASD, and the other one is developmental trauma as well. These are two things that I'm really interested in finding out about. Now, my children don't have FASD. It's an absolute miracle, I think. But developmental trauma is a massive part of their life.
Okay, we'll start with two of the better-known conditions. Adopted children often face complex challenges. Approximately 45% of adopted children have SEMH, That's social, emotional and mental health as their primary area of need. That's 45% compared to 16% among all SEND pupils in England. Adopted children exhibit higher incidences of conditions such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD. Notably, around 25% are either diagnosed with or suspected to have FASD, a condition linked to prenatal alcohol exposure. These conditions are perhaps the most common that you'll hear, but there are others and we'll come to those as and when we need to. ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects focus, impulse control, and energy levels. It's common in adopted children, especially those who've experienced chaos in their early years. However, symptoms can sometimes be misread as just bad behaviour or trauma responses. ADHD can show up as inattention, restlessness, impulsivity, or difficulty regulating emotions. All of these can impact school, friendships, and family life. For adoptive families, getting the right diagnosis plus the required support in place can make a huge difference, helping children thrive rather than struggle. Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition that affects how people communicate, interact, and process the world around them. With adopted children, autism can sometimes be diagnosed before placement, but often only emerges later as children settle into their new families. And it's not easy to spot at first. Children who've experienced early trauma, neglect, or disrupted attachment may show behaviours that overlap with or mask autism, making diagnosis complex and sometimes delayed. But understanding autism is key for adoptive parents, as early identification and tailored support can significantly improve outcomes, both for the child and their family. And then there's perhaps the most complex and least known about condition, but it's one that's incredibly common. FASD, or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, is a brain-based condition caused by exposure to alcohol before birth. It affects how a child thinks, learns, and behaves. It has lifelong impacts on memory, attention, emotional regulation, and social understanding. It's often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed and can be mistaken for ADHD or autism. Early recognition and consistent support can be life-changing for children with FASD and their families. A survey by Adoption UK found that 8% of adopted children had a formal diagnosis of FASD, while an additional 17% were suspected by their parents to have the condition. So approximately 25% of the adopted children are either diagnosed with or suspected to have FASD. Research also shows that the prevalence of FASD is higher among children in the care system, with one study suggesting a rate of prenatal alcohol exposure in 75% of adoption medicals, which would mean that there is a significant risk of FASD among children awaiting adoption. Now, compare that to the general population, where FASD is at around 3.2%. The risk is way higher among adopted children. Developmental trauma refers to the psychological and physiological impacts of repeated chronic stress or neglect during early childhood. This can be caused by abuse, abandonment, or inconsistent parenting. It can disrupt brain development and affect a child's ability to form secure attachments, regulate emotions, and feel safe in the world. Unlike a single traumatic event, developmental trauma occurs over time and can have lasting effects on behaviour, relationships, and mental health.
The main thing I find is that they almost display as if they're about 2 years younger than they actually are.
Yeah, our son is 10, probably is nearly half his age.
Yeah.
And it's the when you talk to him, he sounds as if he understands. He's got a very good grasp of the English language and understanding. Realistically, a lot of the time, he doesn't understand. He gives you the answers he knows you want to hear.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad yours does. my youngest is no, and I think with my oldest, it's more of a case of as he gets older, it's sometimes his inability to read the room, what's appropriate, and what's funny, what's not funny, you know. And there are times when we mess around and it's absolutely fine, but other times you just think, come on. But have you noticed if that developmental side's staying the same, or is he getting closer and closer in age? Because I'm thinking that ours will maybe at some point, you know, even out once they get to adulthood.
I'm not sure. I mean, the support that we've got in now, and the fact that he's at a school that is right for him, educationally, he's doing really well. Come on, leaps and bounds. I suppose there is a natural progression. Whether it will actually catch up.
Yeah.
You know, God, I don't know. You know, I think that's one of them that it's just one of them that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll see if he does. Just going back to, like, my son giving the answers that he thinks you want and yours not. When you've met one neurodiverse child, Mart.
You've met one neurodiverse child. Yeah, I know. You would almost look at them and you think, totally fine, those kids, because they put on an act at school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and so does mine.
Just put on an act to try and keep it all in. But then, you know, equally, when I see that and I see what the oldest is doing in terms of sport, development in terms of clubs, how he's getting on with other people, it's fantastic. And then he comes home and he'll start walking like a chicken.
Yeah.
Which you know, I don't mind so much because it is your safe space.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm bothered by it, it's that I'm just a little bit unsure on where that comes from, how it's manifested in that way still, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, I don't have a problem because, you know, that's what I signed up for and I love him. So
yeah. And that's what he needs, isn't he? That's him taking the lid off the fizzy bottle that's been shaking all day. My son goes to 2 activities, and I mean, there's singing he does on Tuesday night, which he loves. He loves music, loves performing, and then the one on Monday night is silks. It's called Kinetic Movement. Yeah. It's a massive silk that hangs from a big tripod, and you basically climb up it and tie the silks around your body in certain ways. It's ridiculous how high up he is, and then you lean through forwards or lean through backwards and let go of the silks, and you basically tumble down to the ground. But it's all in his core and upper body, and it's all the sensory things he needs. So from that, normally he'll come home and there's none of the stimming or flap, you know, very little of it, because he's had that sensory, all that sensory stuff. It's gone. He's done it. But he had a bit of time off because he had his appendix out. He had 8 weeks off, and we were worried that it was going really put him back quite a long time. Yeah. But I went last week, and he was doing things he was struggling with before he had his appendix out, and he was really, really chuffed, really enjoyed it. And it's like you say, you're sat there, just with a big smile on your face. It is a Sen group, but it's brilliant. And it's one of them where you just sit there and you go, yeah, this is quality, this is.
That's what it's all about, those moments of just, I don't know what it is. It's obviously love and pride and all those things, you know.
Yeah. We're going up the roller coaster, Mart.
Yeah.
We're on the uphill bit of the roller coaster.
The conditions that the children have, sadly, don't end there. And as Carl and Martin have clearly explained, the children don't come with a free copy of the Handbook of Paediatric Conditions. as an adopter, you're very much hitting the ground running, regardless of the preparation that you've done.
Chris here, and just a quick overview on my daughter's medical, psychological profile, I guess. She is diagnosed with FASD. We suspect she also has ADHD. She has been to CAMHS, and we were told that that would be pursued no further as there was no real evidence, yet she masks a lot in school. How do we know that? Because she comes home and takes her internalization of emotions and experience, out on, not us, but in the home environment. She was born addicted to heroin. She was premature at 25 weeks. She was born with chronic lung syndrome and prognosis up till the point when we first were in contact with her wasn't good. She's developed into an exceedingly strong and sporty, athletic young lady, which is quite remarkable. And we are currently pursuing further investigation into her breathing. She says that she has chest pain when she runs. She has run for the school and competes at a very high level and has quite a promising future in this area, potentially, but she also displays an element of fear or medical limitation around that. The reason why I'm sharing that here is that there is an element of maybe, unworthiness or not willing to commit. It's an interesting thing. She has melatonin to help her sleep. She's been on melatonin for just over 2 years. Prior to that, she was in a state of complete and utter distress. She couldn't sleep. She was constantly exhausted, violent, physically and verbally abusive. Since the melatonin, things have been very, very different. She is also on medication to try and overcome needing to wear nappies at night. She's aged 10 and a half, so this is still a challenge for her. Can't remember the name of the medicine, but yeah, she's on the second medicine. The first one made her very aggressive again and completely disrupted her whole being, really. So I think the medications that our children are put on, although necessary, and I would absolutely back that with a melatonin, it's changed, I was going to say our lives, but it's changed her life first and foremost, which inadvertently or consequently has changed ours. Also, not without challenges.
Cohesive attachment disorder, severe anxiety, sensory processing disorder, slow processing learning disability. Oh my God, no wonder doctors say my son's too complicated for them. He has to deal with all that every single day.
So ADHD and developmental trauma. The developmental trauma is in both boys, but for different reasons. There's definitely a lot of neglect. My oldest son was just left to his own devices. On occasion, he'd turn up in people's back gardens miles away from home and have to be come and collected and taken back. Bedtimes, night times, particularly difficult for both of them, hence the fact they both have melatonin to go to sleep. I think the trauma stems from things that were happening in the house they were being raised in. Lots of late night comings and goings, lots of things happening that they would have been scared of. And definitely my youngest, a lot of neglect. He was basically left for 18 months, looked after by his siblings. It's just you can't imagine it.
Chris has been waiting on a diagnosis for his daughter, and things finally shifted gear this week.
This morning, we're just waiting for a feedback call on an assessment. Wish me luck, please, because these things really just almost every time we've accessed help, it's in my mind largely futile. The experts get their money, they walk away, they've done their bit, this is an additional assessment for FASD, an extra. I'm not really sure how it fits in, but I think it adds more weight to the report that she's already got from the paediatrician, and it might leverage some more stuff in school. That's my understanding. The fact that I don't understand it so well indicates one or two things. Either I'm an idiot, or number two, that it won't be worth the paper it's written on. Let's see. But I'm going in open-minded, I promise. And, well, no, I'm going in hopeful is what I am. My experience leads me to believe that it might be largely futile, but I'm hopeful that there are some good outcomes. Just to wrap this up, when we started the process of this assessment, so 2 visits to a place on the other side of Rugeley, and a couple of phone calls as well. So all in all, I reckon we've spent 10 to 12 hours. The first thing they asked me on an online call was, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, I'm going to throw that back to you. What are we going to get out of this? And the fact that I can't quite nail that down would suggest that the answer wasn't, it didn't give me probably quite what I was hoping for. Maybe my expectations are just too high, I don't know. But yeah, so I'm going to feed back on what they feed back, because, yeah, this is an area that I get really fucking frustrated at. I know some of you guys have had a lot of help from various organisations and agencies, and you've found it incredibly helpful. My feelings, I guess, are a bit, they're a bit different. I'm a bit frustrated by, I think a lot of it's piecemeal. I don't think there's enough action, and I certainly don't think enough stuff happens after these things. I think you kind of, you find the stuff out, and then it's like, okay, now which way do you turn? So I've got this. It's kind of like being given a really fantastic bit of kit and not knowing how to use it. As I'm saying that analogy, it is exactly that, because then you have to take the action, don't you? There's no magic wand. Maybe that is the whole thing, isn't it? It's all about the work that we do, isn't it? That's the thing. Anyway, so I'm gonna feed back once I've had the feedback.
I can't not reply, mate. All I can say is, through experience, and we've had challenges like this, you've just got to dig your heels in. And something that Carl said in the past, it's the people that shout the loudest that get the most help. We've had the situation where we've been told and given advice, but the thing is, they're not always right, and it shouldn't just come down to how much money they've got in their bank. Our psychiatrist, one of the times we saw her, probably the last year or so, I don't know, it didn't go down very well. But I basically, in front of all the kids, both of our kids, MRH, and an assistant she had with her, I said to her, I'm going to stop you there, because what you're saying is fundamentally wrong, and I know better than you on this. And it felt like a really stupid, obnoxious, horrible thing to say. But at the end of the day, I was right, and we got what we needed, and things are better now. I'm rambling. To cut a long story short, be firm, don't be rude. You know that. You've done this before. And just, we've got to fight for these kids, because no one else has done, and no one else will do.
So just come off the call after an hour's summative feedback. Some really interesting things, and I think the depth of the report for the FASD is really strong. There's some really good things now about gaining understanding of cognitive ability, coping mechanisms, areas of for development, areas of weakness, all these kind of multi-layered sort of factors. It's there's some real value in there. But as summarised at the end with the specialist, that the proof is in the pudding of how school embraces it. I did request that she pulled out all the information that was directly of interest to school, including the educational recommendations and the any sort of data around assessment and what that means. And she said that she would provide that separately, so that's easier to digest for school, because we need to help them to make the enhancements. On the whole, really interesting content. And but like I say, it's what happens with school now, isn't it? It's what they actually manage to implement as a result of that. If there is no change, you know, that's where my frustration is. If it does happen, then this has been successful. And I hope that's the case, I really do. But yeah, no, it was really interesting. Conversation around creativity and survival. Is creativity or problem solving a result of the need to survive? The reflection was that she's very, very highly independent. But yeah, no, very interesting.
You've been listening to Adopters Anonymous. The voices in this podcast are simply the views and opinions of the group, and me, Anna Riggs. And there are many experiences of adopting that the group are sure are completely different. We also want to hear from you. If you have any advice or comments, or just want to rant, drop us a line at adopters.anonymous@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And remember to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Next time, the school holidays are here. How do you keep the children occupied when routine has been broken?